The morning sun rose over the peaceful farming colony of New Eden, casting golden light across endless fields of green crops. Director Kim Yuna walked through the settlement's main street, greeting her neighbors with warm smiles. Children played in the dusty roads, while their parents prepared for another day of simple farm work. This was exactly the kind of life Yuna had dreamed of when she left Earth 15 years ago. New Eden was home to 3,000 people who had all chosen the same path. They were tired of Earth's crowded cities, endless wars, and complicated politics. Here among the stars, they could grow food, raise families, and live in peace. Most colonists were farmers, but they also had teachers, doctors, and engineers. Everyone worked together to make their small world a better place. Yuna reached the communications center just as Park Do-yan rushed out, his face white with worry. Park was young, barely 25, and had been born on New Eden. He handled all radio messages between the colony and other worlds. "Director Kim, we have a problem," he said, his voice shaking. "Someone is sending us a distress call." Yuna followed him inside the small building filled with radio equipment. The message was playing on repeat, crackling with static. Through the noise, she could hear a desperate voice speaking in perfect human language. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the merchant vessel Morning Star. Our engines have failed and we are under attack. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need immediate help. We have families on board, including children. Our position is—" The message cut off with what sounded like explosions in the background. Park looked at Yuna with worried eyes. "Director, what should we do? They sound like they really need help, but we don't have any military ships. We only have farming equipment and a few old patrol boats." Yuna stared at the radio, her mind racing. New Eden had always been peaceful. They had never faced any real danger. Their biggest problems were usually bad weather or broken farm machines. But this was different. Real people were in trouble, and they were asking for help. Lee Su-yan entered the communications center, still wearing his dirty farming clothes. He was older than Yuna, maybe 50 years old, and had once been a soldier on Earth before becoming a farmer. His hands were rough from years of hard work, but his eyes were still sharp and alert. "I heard the message," he said quietly. "It could be a trap. Pirates sometimes use fake distress calls to trick people into helping them. But what if it's real?" Yuna asked. "What if there really are families out there who need our help?" Lee nodded slowly. "Then we have to do something. We need to be smart about it. Can't fight a real military force with farming tools." Yuna looked at both men, then back at the radio, still playing the desperate message. She thought about all the people on New Eden who trusted her to keep them safe. She thought about the families mentioned in the distress call. Could she live with herself if she did nothing and innocent people died? Send a message to Earth, she decided. Tell them we need military help immediately. Park's eyes went wide. "But Director, that'll take weeks for anyone to get here." "And what kind of message should I send?" Una remembered her training from when she worked for the Earth government many years ago. There were special emergency codes for different situations. Most were for things like natural disasters or equipment failures. But there was one code she had hoped never to use. "Use Emergency Protocol 7, she said firmly. Lee grabbed her arm. "Yuna, that code is only for extinction-level threats. It means our entire species is in danger of being wiped out." "I know what it means," Yuna replied, though her voice shook slightly. "But if we're facing something we can't handle, Earth needs to know. They need to send their best ships and their best soldiers." Park hesitated at his radio controls. "Are you sure? Once I send this message, there's no taking it back. Earth will think we're all about to die." Yuna looked out the window at the peaceful farming settlement. Children were still playing in the streets. Farmers were still working in their fields. Everything looked normal and safe. Maybe she was making a mistake. Maybe the distress call really was just pirates playing tricks. But then she heard the message play again, and she heard the fear in the voice asking for help. She heard what sounded like a child crying in the background. "Send the message," she ordered. Park's fingers moved quickly over the controls. The powerful radio antenna on top of their building turned toward Earth, sending the emergency signal. Across the vast emptiness of space, the message would take time to reach Earth. more time for any help to arrive. What none of them knew was that their act of kindness had just sealed their fate. Far away at the edge of their solar system, a massive alien war fleet was watching and waiting. The distress call had been fake, just as Lee had feared. But it wasn't human pirates who had sent it. The Kethter had been hunting human colonies for months, destroying them one by one. They had learned human language and customs, using them as weapons. Now they had another target, and they were moving closer to New Eden with each passing hour. 3 weeks passed like a nightmare that refused to end. The alien ships appeared on the third day after Una sent her message to Earth, emerging from the darkness of space like metal monsters. 47 warships surrounded New Eden, each one bigger than the colony's largest building. Their hulls were dark and covered with weapon ports that glowed with deadly energy. The aliens called themselves the Kethter, and their leader spoke to the colony through the radio with a voice like grinding metal. War Chief Thekmer demanded immediate surrender, promising that humans who obeyed would be allowed to live as slaves. Those who resisted would be killed quickly, which he claimed was a mercy. Director Kim Yuna stood in the emergency command center they had set up in the colony's basement. Maps covered the walls, showing their few defensive positions. Li Sujian had organized every adult who could hold a weapon, but their army was pathetic compared to the alien fleet above them. They had mining lasers that could cut through rock, but the aliens had weapons that could destroy cities. "How long can we hold out?" Una asked Li as they studied their defense plans. Li shook his head sadly. "Maybe a few hours if they really attack. Our mining equipment isn't designed for war. We have some old patrol boats, but they're meant for checking on distant farms, not fighting warships." Dr. Han Minji ran the colony's medical center and had been working day and night to prepare for the worst. She entered the command center with dark circles under her eyes, carrying a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. "I've moved all the children and elderly people to the deepest shelters," she reported. "We have enough food and water for maybe 2 weeks if we're careful. But if those aliens decide to attack... Oh. She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone knew what would happen. Communications officer Park Doyeon sat at his radio station, desperately trying to contact Earth or any other human world. But the aliens were blocking most signals, allowing only their own threatening messages to get through. Every few hours, Thekmer would demand surrender again, and every time Una would refuse. "Why don't they just attack?" Park asked during one quiet moment. "They have enough firepower to destroy us in minutes." "Because they're playing with us," Lee answered grimly. "They want us to be so scared that we give up without a fight. It's a psychological weapon." But the waiting was harder than fighting would have been. Every day more colonists came to Una, asking if they should surrender. Parents worried about their children. Elderly people didn't want to die in a war. Even some of the younger adults began to wonder if slavery might be better than death. Una held meetings every evening in the colony's main hall, trying to keep everyone's spirits up. She reminded them of why they had come to New Eden in the first place, to build something better than what they had left behind on Earth. "If we surrender now," she told them, "we're not just giving up our own freedom. We're telling these aliens that humans are easy targets. Every other human colony in the galaxy will be in danger." Farmer Choi Minho, who used to fly small aircraft on Earth, had volunteered to pilot their few patrol boats if fighting started. He stood up during one meeting with determination in his voice. "Director Kim is right," he said. "My grandfather fought in Earth's wars to protect his family. Now it's our turn to fight for our families and our neighbors." But not everyone agreed. Some colonists argued in whispered conversations that Una was being foolish. They said she was going to get everyone killed for the sake of pride. The colony began to split into two groups: those who wanted to fight and those who wanted to surrender. On his flagship high above New Eden, War Chief Thekmer was growing frustrated. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered a species that refused to surrender when facing impossible odds. Most civilizations gave up immediately when they saw his war fleet. Others fought briefly and then surrendered when they realized they couldn't win. But these humans were different. They kept refusing his offers, even though they must know they would all die. It puzzled him and made him angry. "Perhaps we should demonstrate our power," suggested his tactical officer. "Destroy one of their outer settlements to show them what will happen if they continue to resist." Thakmer considered this idea but decided against it. No, let them wait and worry. Fear is a better weapon than plasma cannons. Soon their leaders will crack under the pressure and hand over their world, without us having to waste ammunition. As the days passed, both sides waited. The aliens waited for the humans to break and surrender. The humans waited for help from Earth that might never come. Eunice spent sleepless nights wondering if she had made the right choice. The emergency code she had used was meant for threats to all humanity, not just one small colony. Would Earth even respond to her call for help? On the 21st day of the siege, long-range sensors detected something approaching their solar system. Park rushed to tell Una the news, hope shining in his tired eyes. But what was coming toward New Eden was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. The object that appeared at the edge of New Eden's solar system defied everyone's understanding of what a spaceship should look like. It was enormous, 50 kilometers from front to back, longer than some of Earth's largest cities. It was made of some strange dark metal that seemed to swallow light instead of reflecting it. No windows could be seen anywhere on its surface, and its shape followed no design that anyone recognized. War Chief Thakmer stared at his screens in confusion. In all his years of conquest across the galaxy, he had never seen anything like this vessel. It was far too large to be a warship, yet it didn't look like any cargo ship or colony transport he knew about. "What kind of fools build ships that size?" he growled to his officers. "It must be some kind of human city ship carrying refugees. We'll capture it and add thousands more slaves to our collection." But his tactical officer looked worried as he studied the sensor readings. "War Chief, I'm not detecting any of the usual signs of a civilian vessel. No agricultural sections, no residential areas, no civilian communication signals. And the power readings, ... What about the power readings?" Thakmer demanded. "They're unlike anything in our databases." "Whatever drives that ship. It's not technology we understand." Before Thakmer could respond, his communication officer announced an incoming transmission. The signal was so strong and clear that it cut through their jamming systems like they didn't exist. When the message played, every warrior on the bridge fell silent. "Now this is Fleet Admiral Jin Yaram of the United Earth Defense Force Deep Strike Command. You have 30 seconds to withdraw all vessels from the system immediately. This is your only warning." The voice belonged to a human female, but it carried an authority that made even battle-hardened Kethter warriors shift uncomfortably. There was something in her tone that spoke of absolute confidence and terrible power held in check. Thakmer's pride flared. No one, especially not a female from an inferior species, would speak to him with such disrespect. He activated his own communication system and broadcast his response across all frequencies. "Human female, you face the might of 47 Kethter warships. We have conquered a dozen worlds and destroyed every human force we have encountered. Surrender your vessel immediately, and we may allow you to serve as slaves instead of dying." In the void, the response came back immediately, and the coldness in Admiral Jin's voice could have frozen plasma. "Negative. You have chosen poorly." Thakmer roared with anger and issued orders to his entire fleet. "All ships, open fire. Destroy that oversized target before it can escape." 47 warships unleashed everything they had at the mysterious human vessel. Plasma cannons that could melt through asteroid belts fired in unison. Particle beam weapons that had shattered planetary defense stations focused their deadly energy on a single target. Missile launchers released hundreds of guided warheads, each one capable of destroying a city. The combined firepower was enough to crack a small moon in half. Down on New Eden, Director Una and her people watched the battle from their command center. Their screens showed the massive human ship disappearing behind a wall of explosions and energy beams. Park Doyen covered his eyes, unable to watch what he thought was the destruction of their only hope. "They're gone," whispered Doctor Han Mingi. "Our rescuers are gone." But Li Sujion, who had seen many battles in his younger days, kept watching the screens intently. Something wasn't right about what he was seeing. "Wait," he said quietly. "Look at the explosion pattern. That ship was destroyed. The debris field would be expanding outward. The energy is being contained somehow." As the weapons fire finally stopped and the space around the human vessel cleared, everyone stared in disbelief. The enormous ship hung in space exactly where it had been before the attack. Not a single scratch marked its dark hull.
Tever.
Shields or armor protected it. It absorbed the entire assault from 47 warships without even flickering. On Thackemer's flagship, alarms began blaring as sensors detected impossible readings. His weapons officer turned to him with fear in his eyes. "War Chief, our most powerful weapons had no effect at all. Their defensive systems didn't even activate any countermeasures. It was like they absorbed our entire attack and converted it into ... nothing. Impossible." Thackemer roared. "No ship can withstand that kind of firepower. Check your sensors again." But before his officers could respond, the human ship began to move. It didn't accelerate like normal vessels. Instead, it simply appeared in a new position, as if it had stepped sideways through space itself. Admiral Jin's voice filled every Kethter bridge again. And this time, there was something new in her tone. It's not anger, but something far more frightening. The calm certainty of someone who held absolute power. "You had your chance to leave peacefully. Now you will learn why humanity survived long enough to reach the stars." What happened next would be remembered by the few Kethter survivors as the day they learned that some prey can bite back with. The force of dying suns. The human ship began to reveal weapons that shouldn't exist, and the Kethter's understanding of warfare died screaming in the darkness of space. What followed wasn't a battle in any sense that the Kethter understood. It was a demonstration of power so complete that several alien officers simply stopped working and stared at their screens in shock. The human ship didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, reality itself seemed to bend around it. At the first Kethter vessel to die was War Chief Sakmar's own flagship escort. One moment, it was a proud warship bristling with weapons. The next moment, it simply crushed inward on itself, like an invisible giant hand had squeezed it into a ball of twisted metal. "What just happened?" Thackemer screamed at his officers. His science officer's voice shook as he read his instruments. The gravity field around that ship just increased by a factor of 10,000. The hull couldn't withstand the pressure. Before anyone could process this information, 3 more Kethter ships began to flicker like broken lights. Became transparent, then faded away completely, as if they had never existed at all. "They're phasing our ships out of this dimension," the science officer whispered. "How is that possible?" Admiral Jin's voice cut through their confusion with terrifying calm. "You wanted to know what happens when you threaten human civilians? This is lesson 1. The human ship moved again, not through space, but around it somehow. It appeared behind a group of 5 Kethter vessels and released what looked like silver lightning. The energy danced between the alien ships, and everywhere it touched, weapon systems simply stopped working. Engines went dead. Life support failed. Proud warships became floating coffins in seconds. Thackemer watched his fleet die with growing horror. "Return fire. All remaining ships, concentrate your weapons on that monster." The surviving vessels obeyed, but their plasma beams and particle cannons never reached their target. Invisible barriers appeared in space and absorbed every shot. Worse, the energy from their own weapons was somehow being collected and stored by the human ship. "They're using our attacks to power their systems," his tactical officer reported. In a broken voice, "Every time we fire at them, we make them stronger." Down on New Eden, the colonists watched through their sensors as the impossible battle continued. Park Doyon kept adjusting his equipment, convinced that what he was seeing couldn't be real. "Director, are you seeing this?" he asked Yuna. "That single ship is destroying an entire war fleet without taking any damage." Li Sujan, who had fought in many battles during his military service, shook his head in amazement. "I've never seen weapons like these. They're not just advanced, they're using completely different laws of physics. Dr. Han Minji pointed at one of the screens showing a Kefter ship that had been caught in some kind of energy field. Look at that vessel. It's aging decades in seconds. The metal is rusting and falling apart while we watch. In space, Admiral Jin continued her methodical destruction of the alien fleet. She didn't seem angry or excited. Her voice remained as calm as if she were discussing the weather. Lesson 2, she announced, as another group of Kefter ships simply vanished. Human technology has progressed beyond your ability to understand or counter. Thokmar's flagship was one of only 7 vessels still functioning. His crew was in full panic, some officers weeping openly as they watched their comrades die in ways that violated everything they knew about warfare. "War Chief, we must retreat," his navigation officer pleaded. "If we stay here, we'll all die." But when Thokmar ordered his remaining ships to escape, they discovered something even more terrifying. Their faster-than-light drives wouldn't work. Something was preventing them from jumping to hyperspace. "The human ship is generating some kind of field that's locking us in normal space," his engineer reported. "Can't escape." Admiral Jin's transmission reached them again, and this time there was a hint of something that might have been satisfaction in her voice. Lesson 3. When you threaten humans, there is no escape until we decide you've learned enough. Suddenly, the screens in New Eden's command center lit up with an incoming transmission. It wasn't coming from the Kethtar ships. It was from the massive human vessel. Admiral Jin's face appeared on their monitors. She was a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Her uniform was unlike anything they had ever seen. Not the simple clothing of colonial defense forces, but something that spoke of advanced military technology. Behind her, the ship's bridge bustled with activity from crew members who moved with deadly precision. "Director Kim Yuna," Admiral Jin said, addressing her directly, "apologize for our delayed response to your emergency signal. My name is Fleet Admiral Jin Yaram, commanding officer of Deep Strike Vessel Ragnarok. You transmitted Emergency Protocol 7, which connected you to humanity's most classified defense program." Yuna found her voice with difficulty. "Defense program? I don't understand." For the past century, while human colonies spread across the galaxy, pursuing peace and prosperity, Earth has been preparing for this day. We are the Deep Strike Command, 12 vessels and their crews, who volunteered to become humanity's hidden guardians. We developed these weapons in secret, using resources from uninhabited star systems and breakthrough physics that our brightest minds discovered in isolation. The implications hit everyone in the room like a physical blow. Lee Suhayan was the first to speak. "You mean all this time, while we've been farming and building peaceful communities, ... others were preparing for war," Admiral Jin finished. "We are the price humanity paid for your freedom to remain human." The 7 surviving Kethter ships hung in space like broken toys, their crews too shocked to move. War Chief Thakmer sat in his command chair, staring at the screens that showed the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. 37 warships had been destroyed in less than 20 minutes, and he still didn't understand how it had happened. Admiral Jin's voice filled his bridge one final time. But now it carried a different tone, not the cold anger of battle, but the firm authority of a judge passing sentence. "War Chief Thakmer, you and your surviving vessels will be allowed to leave this system. You will carry a message to your empire and to every other species that believes humanity is weak prey. Tell them what you have witnessed here today. Tell them that behind every human farmer, scientist, and child stands the most advanced military force in the known galaxy." The invisible restraints holding the Kethter ships suddenly released. Their engines came back online, and their hyperspace drives began to function again. But none of the alien warriors felt relief, only terror at what they had learned. "Go," Admiral Jin commanded. "And remember, we are always watching." Thakmer gave the order to retreat, and the surviving ships fled into hyperspace like frightened animals. As they disappeared, the massive human vessel turned toward New Eden. Hours later, Admiral Jin stood in the colony's simple meeting hall, surrounded by the people she had saved. The contrast was striking: her advanced combat armor and the colonists' simple farming clothes, her ship's incredible technology and their basic agricultural tools. Yet she spoke to them with respect and genuine warmth. Director Yuna still struggled to process what she had learned. "Admiral, when I sent that emergency signal, I thought I might be overreacting. We're just one small colony. I never imagined." "You used the code exactly as it was intended," Jin replied gently. "Protocol 7 exists for moments when human civilians face extinction-level threats. Your decision saved not just New Eden, but potentially every human colony in this sector." Li Sujan, who had been quietly thinking since the battle ended, asked the question that haunted them all. "How many of you are there? How many people gave up normal lives to become whatever you are?" 12 ships, each with a crew of 50,000 volunteers, Admiral Jin answered. 600,000 people who chose to become humanity's hidden shield? We've been out there for a century, developing weapons and technology that the galaxy has never seen, preparing for the day we would be needed. Dr. Han Minji looked troubled. "But what kind of life is that? Never seeing your families, never having homes of your own?" "We are each other's family now," the Admiral said simply, "and every human colony is our home. When we see children playing safely in farm communities like this one, we know our sacrifice has meaning." Communications Officer Park, who had been monitoring fleet communications throughout their conversation, suddenly looked up with wide eyes. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout human space. 11 more ships like yours are moving into position around our colonies." Admiral Jin nodded gravely. "The age of humanity's quiet expansion is over. For a century we maintained the balance that allowed you to spread peacefully across the galaxy. Now that balance is broken. The Deep Strike fleet is taking active defensive positions." "What does that mean for us?" Yuna asked. "Means the galaxy is about to learn that humans are no longer easy targets. Species that viewed your colonies as potential conquests will think twice. Pirates who preyed on human merchant ships will find themselves facing weapons they cannot comprehend. The peaceful age you've enjoyed was built on a foundation of hidden strength, and now that strength is revealed." Farmer Choi Minho, who had been prepared to die fighting for his home, raised his hand hesitantly. "Will you stay with us? Will we be safe now?" "New Eden is now under Deep Strike protection," Admiral Jin assured him, "but we cannot stay. There are other colonies, other threats, other battles we must prepare for. However, you will never be alone again. If you face danger, we will come." As the Admiral prepared to return to her ship, Yuna walked with her toward the landing pad, where a small shuttle waited. The night sky above them showed the distant lights of the Ragnarok, a reminder of the incredible power that had saved them. "Admiral, can I ask you something personal?" Yuna said quietly. "Of course. Do you ever regret the choice you made, giving up a normal life to become a guardian?" Jin paused and looked up at the stars. "Every day I think about the life I might have had. Family, a home, simple pleasures like watching crops grow or children play. But then I remember that my sacrifice allows millions of other humans to have those things. That makes it worthwhile." Shuttle lifted off, carrying the Admiral back to her ship. Within hours, the Ragnarok vanished into hyperspace, leaving New Eden to rebuild and grow. But the galaxy would never be the same. Across space, the news of the Kethdar fleet's destruction spread like wildfire. Species that had considered humans weak prey suddenly realized they had made a terrible mistake. The quiet farmers and peaceful traders were protected by guardians whose power defied understanding. War Chief Thokmer arrived at his homeworld a broken warrior. Carrying a warning that would echo through the galaxy, humanity had hidden their true strength for a century. And now the universe would learn to fear the species that had conquered the stars not through force, but through the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect each other.